Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 5 of Perfect Inspiration. My name is Brian Matiash. In this episode, we're going to take a look at, what is involved with getting the shot even under crucial times. For this shot here, this was taken in Washington State, and you see a train coming. Now, I was originally actually standing up here shooting down the track when a man came up to me and said that I needed to clear out because a train was coming. And pretty quickly thereafter, the train showed up, and I knew I wanted to get a shot here. The thing was, I remember kind of not frantic per se, but I wanted to figure out a good vantage point, and unfortunately, the train's not going to stop for me. So I needed to think on my feet pretty literally. So what I did was I had my tripod on, and I had my camera on my tripod, and I turned the live view on. And what I was doing was I was looking through the live view, holding my camera up, so I was kind of almost using it as this kind of director's window. And I walked around this kind of beach area over here that you don't see in frame until I found the shot that I wanted where the bridge was aligned. And the reason why I wanted to do that was I wanted to drag the shutter a bit so that when the train came through, I wanted it to bisect the frame. I wanted it to cut right through, and instead of freezing the train, I wanted to get motion. Now, originally this train was this was middle of the day, so the train was coming through, and if I shot it without any sort of filters, the train would have been frozen. The camera just couldn't have dragged the shutter enough because it was so bright outside. So what I did was I put a neutral density filter on. The neutral density filter that I used was the Big Stopper by Lee. The 10-stop neutral density filter just is a 4x4 piece of glass that sits on the front of your lens, and it essentially causes it takes more time for light to hit the sensor, thereby increasing your shutter. So what you can see here is I saw the train start coming, and I needed to get the right settings. At this point, I didn't know what the settings would be to get a proper exposure, but also to get proper motion. So I started with experimenting. I think I started at around f6 at 6 seconds, and you can see I was triggering and I was starting to get motion. But again, this was 6 seconds. You really don't have a lot of time to think right here. You really have to be kind of confident in what you're doing. So the first shot at 6 seconds I saw here, I got a little motion. And then I kept practicing. Now remember, every time I shot it, I gave up 5 to 6 seconds because that's the exposure time, and the train is moving. So I started to see, all right, at 6 seconds it's not getting quite what I want, so I adjusted it to 5 seconds. I started getting the motion here, and basically what I had was I had one final test shot. The train was I started the exposure when the train was about here, and it took about 5 seconds for it to cross over the bridge. I knew that this was exactly what I wanted once I saw this on my frame, and I did one more exposure. And this is the shot I wanted. And what I really love about it actually is I love the reflection you get, but most importantly, I love that this yellow strip pretty much goes through the entire frame. The train starts pretty much on the right side, and it ends all the way through the left side. And it gives the sense that the train was just barreling by, and that's exactly what I wanted to get. If I didn't really have my wits about me, or if I didn't really kind of pay attention and do some quick tests beforehand, I'm pretty sure that I would have missed it. So it's really important when you're standing out here and time is not on your side. You don't have control of the environment, as it were. You have to know your camera well enough. You have to know that, all right, in this case here, it's too bright for me to get the motion without a filter, so I'm going to put a neutral density filter on. I'm going to test at varying apertures and shutter speeds just to make sure that I get one, ideal motion here, but two, I still get good exposure in the clouds back here and the water in the foreground. So now that I had that shot, I'm free to stylize it, and we're going to do so by sending the image from Lightroom over to the Perfect Photo Suite. I'm going to go over to File, plug in Extras, and then select Perfect Photo Suite from the menu item. Now that we're in Perfect Layers, there's nothing that I really need to do here except for I just want to get rid of this little bit of, it looks like just seaweed or something in the water. So I'm going to take the Refine brush here, drop my brush size down, and just make a little stroke down there and right there. It's those little things that kind of annoy me. It's not critical or anything, but I don't necessarily like hard lines intersecting the edges of the frame. I could also try to remove this line here. I'm going to try. It may work, it may not work, but I'm going to give it a shot. I'll just do a straight line across. And it actually does a really nice job. I'll just kind of close that area there. And I'm actually happy with that. It minimized that one line over there. With that done, I'm going to send it over to Perfect Effects by clicking on Effects from the module selector to stylize. All right, now that we're in Perfect Effects, let me give you a little kind of insight as to where my imagination is going. I see this train flying by, and for some reason I'm just thinking of Superman. You know, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive. Here we have a locomotive that looks like it's flying by like a speeding bullet. So I want to give this somewhat of a Superman-ish, superhero look. And there's an effect that does a really nice job at that. Under the movie looks category, there's an effect kind of towards the right, and it's called Moulin Rouge. Now I'm going to click on it once to apply it, and it applies to the whole image. Now after applying it, I realize, you know what, I only like it how it's affecting the train and the bridge. So what I'll do first is I'll adjust the strength of that effect layer. I'll start at 0 and then bring it up and kind of stop about halfway. I really like what I see here, and again, I don't want it to impact the rest of the image. So I'm going to take the masking bug from the tool well on the top left, and I'm going to click in the image, and that invokes the bug. Now I'm going to take that bug and I'm going to put it essentially over the part of the area that I want the effect to apply, except you'll see here that it's actually removing the effect from that area. It's keeping that Moulin Rouge effect everywhere but this strip. So to essentially flip that, all I need to do is go to Masking and select Invert Mask, and that flips where the presence of the effect is. So now if I bring up the inspector and I show you that mask, by dropping down and just going to Overlay, you'll see that the mask is essentially covering everything but the middle of the frame. And that's what I wanted to do. And also you can see now that as I adjust, it's really only affecting that middle part of the frame. Alright, I'm going to hit Add to continue building onto this. The next thing that I want to do is add a little bit of a soft comic book feel, and something like Lord of the Rings, also in the movie looks category, does a nice job. You can see here I like what it does to the whole image. I almost want to keep it at 100%, but what I also do want to do is bring out the blending options and see if I can blend it a different way. So I'm going to cycle through here, go to Multiply, it looks really cool. Soft Light looks awesome. Hard Light looks cool, but I'm going to stick with Soft Light. We'll drop it down to 0 and then just bring it up a little bit. So you can see already, if I just toggle the preview by hitting Command P or Control P, Command P for the Mac, Control P for the PC, we're really kind of getting a nice punchy look. Alright, now I mentioned that one of the things I loved most about this shot was that streak of yellow through the center, and I want to bring that out some more. So to do that, I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to use a Color Enhancer Effect option. So first I'll drop the effect bar to get more screen real estate. And if I drop down, the effect drop down here, and again that's under the Advanced tab in Perfect Effects 3, not the Basic. If I drop down, I can go to the Color Enhancer, and then I'm going to target the yellow channel by dropping the color range and then selecting yellow. Now you can see my hue and saturation sliders have turned to yellow only. I'm going to bring the saturation up a bit, and I'm going to bring the lightness up because I want those yellows to be brighter. I'm going to leave the hue alone. I might actually target it a bit more. And now you can see what it's doing is it's making that yellow really electric, except it's targeting the entire scene. So anywhere that there's yellow, you'll have that color enhancer, and I don't want that. So to target it only to where I want, I'm going to go to my masking brush. I'm going to bring up the inspector, and I'm going to click on Invert. And that essentially hides the effect and puts the masking brush into a paint in mode. Now I can just go ahead here, I'll drop my brush size a bit, and I'm just going to paint in the areas that I want the effect to apply to. So I'm namely just putting it onto this strip. You'll notice that there was yellow on the steel bridge here, but I don't want that to pop any more than it already is. So I'm just kind of making these quick strokes, and if I bring up my mask, again, I can do that by going to the inspector and then showing the mask as an overlay. You can see that I've missed some areas here. I usually do this after my first take. I'll do my masking and then I'll bring up the overlay mask just so I can see if I've missed anything. And I don't need it to be critical. I'm not going too nuts with it, but you can see here now that it's really only applying to that area there. And it's those little things, this is something that I always try to preach, it's those little things, even though I applied an entire effect just to this small amount, it shows. It shows that methodology there in stylization. Next, I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to apply a tone enhancer. Again, using the effect options, the tone enhancer will give me more texture in the scene. I'll scroll down here, and I'm going to bring the local contrast slider up a bit to about 25 to 27%, and I'm going to take the overall strength of that layer, bring it to 0, and bring it back up just a bit. So you can see that we've got a lot of really nice texture going on in the foreground and even in the water. I like it. Normally I try to avoid texture in the water, but I like how it brings out the reflection even more of the train. I'll hit Add to continue on, and then I'm going to go to the glow category, so I'm going to bring up the effect options, select glow, and I'm going to apply a dreamland glow, but in a very, very small amount. I really like what it'll do to the image here. Bring it to 0, and just kind of drop it down. And I really only want the glow, again, to apply to the train. I don't want the glow to apply to the rest of the image. So there's an easy way to do that. Instead of going to the masking bug like we did before, I can go to that Moulin Rouge effect that we started with, and then copy the mask by going to Masking, Copy Mask. So that copies this little mask right here. Now if I go to the Dreamland effect and then go back to Masking and paste the mask, now that glow is really only applying to that same exact region of the image that Moulin Rouge did, which is perfect because now you can see I can just control that information there. So what I'm going to do is take the masking brush, and I want to remove that effect from the reflection because it was darkening it a bit too much. And then to finish things off and to further draw the eye to the center of the frame, I'll hit Add one more time and apply my last effect under the vignette category. There's an effect called Subtle Vignette. It's really nice, it's very, very subtle, and I can drop that down to 0 and just bring it up a tiny bit, about 35% here. So you can see the before and the after. Again, Command P on a Mac, Control P on a PC. What we were able to achieve here, it just looks awesome. It definitely has a Superman feel to it. Now I can apply and save to return back to Lightroom to finish things off. Now we're in the Develop module of Lightroom, and I'm just going to finish things off really quickly. I will bring the exposure up just a tiny bit, just to make it a little bit brighter. I think something like 0.05. I'm going to key it in, and I definitely will bring up a little bit of contrast. The other thing that I like to do is add some clarity, which will add a little bit more bite to the image. If the image is a bit too punchy for you in terms of color, that's not a problem. Sometimes what I like to do is just drop the saturation a bit and then boost the vibrance a tiny bit. That does a nice job of kind of reducing the overall punchiness of the color, but bringing out the right colors in terms of the vibrancy. Now if we go to the grid view and see the original image, this is the image that we started with, and remember, this image came about because we took the time under pressure to make sure that we had the right exposure, we were in the right position at the right time, and we fired the exposure when it was optimal. We were able to get this shot, and then we used perfect effects. Combined a few different effects here to give the image that Superman superhero feel. Be sure to download the preset that I used to get the look of this image right below this video, and I hope to see you next week on episode number 6. Thank you very much.